Good morning, York College. I'm going to ask you a question. What are you doing here? I mean, really, what are you doing here? And I ask that because we have got to the point in the school year where that's where you really start evaluating what you really are doing here. It's where you start thinking this. The newness of coming back to school and seeing old friends has probably started to wear off a little bit. The excitement of going away for the first time has started to wear off a little bit. And so you kind of got into this routine. And if you're like most people at this point in the college semester, you probably asked yourself at least once, maybe multiple times, what am I doing here? And that's a very, very relevant question. I want to tell you a little bit about my background with York College to try and make a point that I hope will stick when you walk out of here. In August of 1987, I got off Interstate 80 out here south of town, and that part of the town looked very, very different back then. When you got off I-80 at that time, there was a McDonald's, there was a Wendy's, and there was a Texaco truck stop on the south side of the interstate that had a neon red sign that flashed that said food, which immediately got my attention. But I'd driven across the state of Nebraska and I hadn't seen anything but corn. I'd come from the West Coast, halfway across the country by myself, and I came to York College sight unseen for my second freshman year. That's a long story for another time. So I got off the interstate and I'm sitting there waiting to turn left to go across the bridge, and I'm in my old Dodge pickup, and I said out loud to myself, what am I doing here? And as I crossed the bridge, I actually tried to convince myself to turn left and go back onto Interstate 80 and drive west and go back where I came from. What am I doing here? I found my way into town, found my way to the campus, found my way to Thomas Hall, which was a men's dorm at that time, found my way to the dorm director's apartment, a man named Bill Canny, asked him for my key, he hooked me up with my key, and I was exhausted from my trip. So I unloaded my truck. It was a Friday evening, I unloaded my truck, and I just threw everything into my room. Just stacked it everywhere. No AC, a window that won't open. I found a top sheet in my bag. I laid it on top of the mattress, found a pillow, head down into the pillow and slipped into a coma for the next several hours. And I was resting very peacefully, so I thought, until a few hours later I started hearing voices in my room. So here I am in my pillow. I roll my head to my left. I don't have contacts in, I don't have my glasses on. All I can see is the very fuzzy outline of the largest person I have ever seen in my life sitting in a chair in the middle of my dorm room. And I'm sleeping on top of a sheet in boxer shorts. This is awkward. What am I doing here? And I rolled back, looked back again, the person was still there. I reached for my glasses, I put them on, it's my roommate's mom. They were from Ponca City, Oklahoma, and she said, oh, that's all right, baby, I got 4 boys. I said, I'm not one of them. The worst part of it is she didn't leave the room while I got dressed. Kid you not. What am I doing here? See, the answer for a lot of you, what you're doing here, might seem fairly simple. A lot of you are here because you're pursuing a passion, you're chasing that dream. And that was me. I was an athlete in high school and college, and so for me, college athletics was an opportunity to play a few more years. I wasn't good enough to be professional or anything, but it was an opportunity to keep playing and doing something that I love. That's you. That's some of you. Some of you are here because you're pursuing a passion, because you love to perform, you love the arts. And this is an opportunity to keep chasing that passion of putting yourself out there in front of people and trying to get it as right as you can and wait for that applause at the end of the performance. Some of you are here likely because York College was always going to be the place for you. You had parents that went here, you got hooked up with a counselor at a church camp one summer, whatever it is, but for some of you, York College was always going to be the place, and so here you are. Others of you are here, and the answer for you seems to be very simple. I'm just here to get a degree and get a job. Find my way out in the world and do something for me. That's a real answer. But I'm going to tell you guys that what you're doing here is much bigger than that. Regardless of what you're pursuing, regardless of what your focus is, what you're doing here is quite a bit bigger than that. A lot of you have already made up your minds what career you want to go into. I decided I wanted to be a teacher. And originally I decided I wanted to be a teacher mostly because I wanted to coach. And it wasn't until I actually got into the classroom and started teaching that I discovered how much I enjoyed teaching. So I went on from York. It was a 2-year school at the time, and I went on, I finished my degree, got certified to teach, and I actually tricked somebody into hiring me as a teacher. Yukon High School, little suburban community just west of Oklahoma City. First full-time teaching job. I had the summer, a few weeks in the summer to kind of get ready, and so I got my classroom all decorated, I got it all set up, and things on the wall. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go, right? About a week before school starts, the principal calls me and says, Matt, got a situation here. We've had to make some changes to the school schedule. And the teaching loads have changed for some teachers, and you're one of them. Can you teach psychology? So, like every recent college graduate who's desperate for a job, I lied. Yeah, I can teach psychology. I didn't know a thing about psychology. I think I taught that class a month before I found out it was spelled P-S-Y. But there I was, teaching psychology. Impersonating a psychology teacher is what I should say. Now, a lot of people think that, the difficulties in teaching lie exclusively with just the students you interact with. I'm going to tell you, me teaching psychology was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. It was horrible. I had to go home every night with the textbook and read the chapter and teach the material to myself so I could go into class the next day and try to teach it to the kids. So I taught class every day just like this. All right, kids, here's your homework. I want you to go home tonight. I want you to read chapters 1 and 2 and stop. Don't go reading on ahead into the textbook, coming back tomorrow asking questions about stuff I haven't taught myself yet. It's horrible. A lot of people think that it's kind of the rough and tough kids in the classroom that make it difficult on teachers. I'm here to tell you, the hardest kids for me to teach were the smart kids. Because every day they walked in the classroom and they knew more than me. It was terrifying. One kid, Evan, would come into class every day. Mr. Fike, Mr. Fike, Mr. Fike. He sat in the front row and always had a question, most of which I didn't know the answer to. Mr. Fike. Yes, Evan? When will the class get to have an in-depth critical discussion about Pavlov's dogs and theories of stimulus and response? Huh? Evan, what chapter are you on? 13? I gave Evan a 0 for not following instructions. Here's what was really going on in my classroom. Here's where it became very, very relevant to me. April 19th, 1995 started off like any other day in my classroom. It was a very clear day in Oklahoma. It was a beautiful spring day. And a student of mine named Joe Carson, it's funny how names stay etched in your mind. A student of mine named Joe Carson had left the room. And he came back a few minutes later and he said, Coach, something's happening downtown. They got all the TVs on in the library. Everyone's standing around watching. And it wasn't a few moments later that our principal came on the intercom, said, teachers, there's a big news event happening in downtown Oklahoma City. If you wish to turn on the TVs in your classrooms and follow it, feel free to do so. So click, turn on the TV. And I'm sort of paying attention to what they're talking about. They're talking about a building, and they're talking about a natural gas explosion, and they're talking about all kinds of different things, and no one really, it's early in a crisis, and no one really knows what's going on. A student is standing by my desk, a young man named Kelly Jones. He says, "Coach, did they say Murrah building?" I don't know, because I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. So I started watching it more closely, watched it long enough to hear the newscaster say Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Turned and looked at this student. He was as white as a piece of paper. His hands were shaking. He said, "Coach, my dad works there." I said, "Go home, find your mom. She's going to need you." It's the only thing I knew to do. Larry Jones, Kelly's dad, Larry Jones, was one of the last 4 bodies that was pulled out of the Murrah building. Timothy McVeigh's domestic terrorist attack made its way into my classroom at Yukon High School in a very direct, upfront way. It wasn't just on the news, it was real, and it was right in front of me. The building became so unstable during the recovery efforts that the first responders actually had to implode the building, bring the rest of it down because it was too unsafe. I mean, it wasn't safe enough for them to go in and search for the last few bodies. Larry Jones worked in the Department of Highways office in the federal building. There were 4 bodies recovered towards the very end of the recovery effort. Larry Jones was one of them. It was almost a full month before those last bodies were recovered. And during that month, Larry Jones' son, Kelly, kept coming to school, stayed with his routine. But he was a very quiet kid who all of a sudden had a lot more to say. And so he would come to and my class wasn't the only one. There were other teachers and other staff members at our school that did a great job with this, is probably much better than me. I wasn't a counselor. I didn't know what to say to this kid. So I just listened for the next month, and he would talk about all the things that were happening in their family and happening at home. All I did was listen. The interesting thing about listening was this. When I came to York College for my second freshman year, I might have been the worst listener in the history of listening. I was pretty good at listening to myself, and that was about it. And during my time here at York College, I learned how to listen from people who were willing to listen to me. I had a coach named Brad Fisher who listened to me way more than he should have. I had professors like Dr. Mabry Miller, York College Hall of Famer right there, who listened to me. Faculty members like Elmer Baker, who listened to me. Dr. Clark Rausch listened to me. Dr. Frank Wheeler listened to me. And I'm convinced, as I look back now, closing in on 50 years old, that that's probably the biggest transformation that happened for me as a student here. There were other things that happened too. I met the best woman I've ever met, so I convinced her to marry me. Massively outkicked the coverage there. Okay. But at the end of the day, I can look back and say, that's one of the big takeaways for me from York College was I became a better listener. And I realized the importance of it. See, here's the thing, guys. You'll take away other things from this place. Maybe you won't, maybe it's not listening, maybe you're good at that already. But you're going to take away things from this place if you open your ears, if you open your eyes, and more importantly, if you open your hearts. You will take away things from this place that will make you uniquely equipped to go out into a world right now that is a wreck. Las Vegas, just 2 days ago. On and on, the problems go. And people want to sum up the problems in our country and say, well, we have a race problem, or we have a gun problem, or we have a political problem, or we have a gay marriage problem, or we have an abortion problem, and on the list goes. I'll tell you what, we got a sin problem. That's what's in our country. We got a sin problem. We have fallen by the wayside, and we are further away from God than we have ever been. So what's the response? I think it's this. Sin, biblically defined, is separation between man and God. That tells me that there is a massive gap out there in our world between where the Creator is and where the created are. You will leave this place with skills to go out and stand in that gap. You can bridge that gap. You can make a difference. I've got a sign on the wall in my office that says, do something that matters. You can go from this place and you can do something that matters. Now here's the thing. I don't have to convince you of this. The world is messy. So to make a difference in this world, to close that gap, you have to be willing to go out and step into other people's mess. But if you're willing to do that, if you'll take what we're offering you, what your college is going to equip you with, if you will take that and willingly step into other people's mess, I'm convinced with all my heart we can close that gap. And we can restore people's hearts back to where they need to be. You have to do it with love. You have to do it with compassion. You have to do it with kindness. But it's there. So my prayer for all of you is this, that you will leave York College believing not just that you have a degree that's going to set you up for a good paycheck for the rest of your life. You will leave York College believing that you are going to take yourself out into the world and stand in that gap. Close it up. Bring people to where they really need to be. That's how we fix our world. And York College is going to play a part in that. I guarantee it. Thank you for listening. God bless all of you. God bless York College.